I mean, I'm coming to this site for the first time as someone who is rather ignorant about Singapore, but lived in Hong Kong for a number of years. And what strikes me is there's absolutely nothing like this in Hong Kong. Um, there is a cenotaph in the centre of Hong Kong, as there is actually very near to this site, just across the road. So why does Singapore have this great big monument, whereas Hong Kong does not? I mean, you've done some work on Hong Kong as well as Singapore.
So first of all, Hong Kong and Singapore do have radically different post-war histories. So Singapore becomes an independent nation-state in 1965, whereas Hong Kong gets handed over by the British colonial government to the People's Republic of China in 1997. So there's completely different dynamics at play here. And I think if we situate the Civilian War Memorial in this context of decolonization, we can sort of explain why this focus on the civilians and not, for instance, on British Empire troops or Commonwealth troops is here, as there is at the cenotaph, for example, which we will be covering as well. So this I see as one of the first concerted efforts by the new government of Singapore to put a new focus on the memorial landscape in Singapore and to integrate the Japanese occupation into the foundation myth of the new nation.
Yes, and as Hamza was saying, this is basically this monument, or the project was co-opted by the post-independence Singapore government to emphasize inter-ethnic unity.
Not only in terms of trying to get all the four races represented, but also it was paid for by the government as well, dollar for dollar, isn't it? Whatever the community could actually raise, they would actually match it. But just to add on to what you just said, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this whole difference between Hong Kong and Singapore is also because at that point of time, Singapore was really varied in terms of its population. It was really plural.
Yes.
So you have Chinese, Malays, Indians, and probably Hong Kong is a little bit more homogeneous in terms of
yes,
population.
although, of course, I mean, Hong Kong was occupied for about the same period as Singapore, slightly longer by a matter of weeks, in fact, and also experienced significant massacres, which are barely commemorated, actually, in Hong Kong to this day.
Nation buildings are like focused on trying to get
well, I mean, that's the key thing. Nation building?
So,
what nation building?
I mean, Lee Kuan Yew at that point in time was really very keen on trying to get all these people to sort of like play down their own individual identities and try to create a kind of Singapore identity that would apply to all.
Exactly. And this is why you would find the symbolism right here. So if you look at the chopsticks behind us, they don't stand
Some
apart.
people would say that, you shouldn't call it chopsticks, actually. But,
well, exactly. We shouldn't really call it chopsticks, but if we look at the four pillars, they don't stand apart. They're actually being joined together by what is probably an architectural feature to actually keep them stable. But what it also symbolizes is that, and what the Civilian War Memorial more general, I think, is supposed to symbolize is all these different ethnicities in Singapore standing in unison together in defense of Singapore, in this case against the Japanese, and in common suffering under the Japanese. So there is this inherent commonality that is then being used to pass this on and use this for the new emerging nation in Singapore.
And that's really something also very interesting in terms of symbolism here, is that you basically have the monument standing right in the middle of sort of like this,
pool.
What would you call it? Pool. And then you basically have this pathway here. So that little island there is supposed to represent Singapore.
Oh, really?
That's a causeway that goes all the way to Malaysia. So that's the hinterland.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.